monarch on one side and the democratic forces on the other side aligned against the Rana's rule. And when they were aligned against the Rana's rule, eventually in 1951, that Rana's rule was ended. They were not the monarch, but still they were carrying all the powers, which are the practically very, very important power. Now this King Mahendra removed all the other political parties, so it became a democracy, but the party-less democracy. All the parties were banned. What were the underlying fuel? The underlying fuel we have discussed regarding the social conditions, like there is the issue of the nepotism that was reflected in the context of the nepo kids, right? They are getting the privileges, and the other sections of society, which is the commoners, that are getting all the kind of trouble. For example, the issues like corruption, lack of transparency. There is also another major issue, India's internal security. Because prominently the countries like China and Pakistan, those should not get advantage of these things. The advantage in the form of economic, advantage in the form of strategic, that should not be gone. Hello everyone, I am Vishal Salsekar, and today we are going to discuss a very interesting topic from the UPSC examination perspective, and the topic is also having a present current affairs linkage, right? The topic is regarding the youthquake in Nepal, Gen Z versus the governance deficit. Now, why this is important from the examination perspective? I'm very sure that you might have already heard a lot regarding whatever protests that are going on in Nepal. There has been an interim government now, right? So what all things you might have already seen through different portals and all. I'm very sure that in this particular video you are going to get clarity about entire aspects which is relevant from the examination perspective. So in this discussion of roughly 30 minutes, we are going to clarify each and every aspect which is relevant from not only this particular protest perspective, but also from the perspective of historical aspects, also from the perspective of the India's thinking with respect to this particular issue, right? So let's start the discussion. Now, what is recently going on in Nepal? Quickly, if I tell you about that, there was a ban that was launched on the social media websites, specifically 26 social media websites on 4th of September, right? The context that was provided in order to go for that particular ban, that these particular sites have not renewed their registration and not complying with the country's orders as well as the country's rules. That's why we are banning these particular websites or these particular social media platforms. Now, what has happened after that, that from the 9th September onwards, there were protests started in the country. Now, when the protests were started in the country, that protests initially were going on in a peaceful manner. There were peaceful demonstrations outside the parliament and outside a lot of government building. But then police utilized the brutal force or the application of brutal force that led to the killing of certain people. Roughly 20 plus people got killed in these particular clashes, and eventually then there was the youthquake that was started, and eventually the parliament building, the prime minister's house, the presidential house, the courts, and everything which is the prominent public property, that was demolished, that was burned, and even the hotels and all. So is it only about the banning of social media platforms that triggered this much youthquake, or was there any other thing behind that also, which is like persisting corruption, the issue regarding nepotism, the issues like lack of political instability? All these things ask the question that why there were the protests that had happened at this point of time. So in this video, we are going to deconstruct all these things and what will be the impact of this particular protest and whatever turmoil is going on from the India's perspective, specifically internal security and the international relations. Now, when we have to see regarding this particular protest or the movement that is going on right now in Nepal, there is a history of the movement with respect to the Nepal, right? So this is the timeline that you are seeing on your screen regarding what were the different movement at different point of time in Nepal. So first in this is regarding the 1951, where basically what happened from 1846 onwards. So there was rule from the Ranas. So from 1846 onwards, the Ranas were ruling. So these were nothing but the hereditary prime minister who were having a lot of power. They were having significant power accumulated in their own hand, and the monarch or the king of Nepal used to be the titular head only. The Nepal's king was not able to utilize these powers on behalf of the king who was utilizing the power. It was the Ranas in Nepal. So there were movements started from 1950 onwards regarding the Ranas rule in Nepal, because they were the kind of, despite not being the monarch, they were the absolutist monarch, right? And eventually what happened, that there was movement regarding what? Regarding throwing away this particular absolutism, regarding the parliamentary democracy. So the monarch on one side and the democratic forces on the other side aligned against the Rana's rule. And when they were aligned against the Rana's rule, eventually in 1951, that Rana's rule was ended. They were not the monarch, but still they were carrying all the powers, which are the practically very important power. So at that point of time, King Tribhuvan was the ruler of Nepal, and 1951 mein this Rana rule was removed. And what established after that? It was the parliamentary democracy that was established in Nepal. There was still monarch. Now the monarch came to picture, and along with that monarch, there were different parties. For example, Nepalese Congress, that was a prominent party. Now, once the parliamentary democracy, what do you understand by this? That means there will be multiple political parties. They will be fighting the election. Once they will be getting majority, their representative will be part of the executive. They will be also legislative. There will be executive also, right? Now, once this particular thing had happened, now there were series of issues that were started after this. So from 1951 onwards till 1960, there were multiple prime ministers. There were different government. And the election for the first time happened only in 1959. That parliamentary election held in 1959. Now till this point of time, even the monarchy in Nepal got changed. And right now, King Mahendra was the king of Nepal, right? So he wanted to ensure all the power in his own hand, and he was also fed up with that what kind of political turmoil is going on in the country. So he went against that particular parliamentary democracy system which was having multi-party. Now this King Mahendra removed all the other political parties, so it became a democracy, but the party-less democracy. All the parties were banned. So in this particular period, where the King Mahendra and later on King Birendra was the ruler, this particular panchayat autocracy was ensured. Now panchayat is not like present day the panchayati Raj institutions that you are seeing in India. The panchayat was considered for that particular democratic model which was under the monarch. So effectively the monarch was the absolute ruler, but then there was a kind of parliament which is the representative, not the elected one. There was no such thing like the parliamentary multi-party democracy. So till 1990, now you think that once this particular roughly 30-year time period, when the people who were previously protesting for the multi-party democracy, now when the power had taken back from these people, now they must be protesting. So hence there was 1990s ke around, there was the movement started which was known as the Jan Andolan 1. So the Jan Andolan 1 was started from 1990 onwards, which was regarding providing for the multi-party democracy. There were protests that were going on against the absolutist monarch, and here who was the ruler? It was King Birendra who was the ruler of Nepal at that point of time. So there were powers that were taken from him. He was forced to give away a lot of power to the parliament, and from here there was this people's movement resulted into the multi-party democracy. That means there will be multiple political parties. There may be Congress, there may be communist parties, there will be different political parties. But again, another thing that persisted from this particular point of time was regarding lack of political instability, because the elites were mainly drawn to take the benefit of whatever chunk they are getting out of the country's economy, right? So in 1990, though the multi-party democracy was established, but still the political stability was not achieved. And then there was alternative political forces which were working in the country, and this time it was the Maoist and the communist forces. So the communist parties in Nepal and the Maoist insurgency simultaneously led to another unrest. What was their argument? That whatever political parties are there, they are just being ruled by elite. People are not getting any right. They are not getting any representation. So we have to overthrow these. We have to completely get rid of the monarchy, because right now what was the constitutional system? It was the constitutional monarchy, right? The monarch was still there, though it was a titular head, but still the monarch was there. At the Maoist insurgency and the communist movement simultaneously, there was communist movement. There were issues going on regarding taking the powers from king and making it as a communist model on the lines of China. So you can now assume that there must be certain external forces which were supporting these particular insurgent movement, and there was eventually rise of multiple communist parties in Nepal. And then from 1996 to 2006, there was a rise of this instability. Now, those who were living in these particular point of time, they are seeing what? Instability in their country. Now, 2006 May, there was the Maoist insurgency stopped. They were talking about certain peace proposal, and eventually that particular peace proposal came in 2008, where this particular monarchy was abolished. There was establishment of a constituent assembly. That constituent assembly abolished the monarchy in Nepal and eventually established the Federal Republic. There were provinces that were divided within the Nepal, and it was proclaimed as a Federal Republic. That means the monarchy is now gone. There will be the president in the Nepal, and that one will be the elected one. So that will not be the hereditary ruler. Now, once it became the Federal Republic, now the task was that how to get the constitution, because the people were not agreeing. The Congress had certain different stand, the communist parties have different stand, Maoists have certain different stand, and the people's parties have certain different stand, right? That's why again instability. So from 2008 onwards, there were, though parliamentary democracy that was there, but new constitution was again getting delayed and delayed. Eventually in 2015, that new constitution was adopted, and I'm very sure that those who are keeping a track or having certain idea regarding what happened after the adoption of the new constitution in 2015. This constitution was discriminatory towards the Madhesi community, which is living in the Terai region of the Nepal. Terai region is the region where India and Nepal ka border is situated. For example, this is the region of India, this is the region of Nepal. So this particular region is the Terai region, and here there is predominantly Madhesi community. Now, when Madhesi community thought that they did not got the adequate representation in this constitution, there was protest, there were movements started, and then eventually there was blockade on the border. That means this particular border where the India and Nepal border is there, there was a blockade on this border. This eventually led to preventing the supplies from India to Nepal, and that particular protest further fueled anti-India sentiments within Nepal. Lastly, in this case, 2015 के बाद again every year basis पे there have been changes that are there in the government. So there is no stability. So from 2008 to 2025, the Nepal has seen roughly 14 government. That means roughly 14 prime minister within a span of 17 years. Now assume a scenario. 5 years is the term of the prime minister. 5 years is the term of that particular parliament. And how many prime ministers are there? 14. That means there is utter political chaos in that country. Why again and again? Because the political arrangements between different political parties, the corruption one by one, each and every prime minister is coming, and then they are doing their chunk of corruption. They are also trying to meddle and try to poach between the China and India also. So these are the things that is regarding the timeline, regarding the discontent. That shows that this is not for the first time there have been certain issues or the protests or the movement that are going on in Nepal. There is a history. And from the UPSC perspective, this history or historical traces can be important from the general studies one perspective and even the international relations between India and Nepal perspective. Now, another term that you might have heard in this particular protest is regarding Gen Z. Who is the Generation Z or the Gen Zs and why they are protesting? So see, regarding Gen Zs, there is no such one definition, but generally this is referred to those people right now who are between 18 to 13. Why? Because mid of 1990s, they are born between roughly mid of 1990s, roughly 1995 plus, and then roughly they are right now from 18 to 30 years. So to some extent you can say that they are the youth population. Now they are also known as the digital natives. Why? Because see, the social media is one such thing which is connecting different people, which is helping them to provide their views, which is helping them in order to connect with their peers, which is helping them in order to express their opinions, their ideas, whatever they are thinking about different system. Because the social media has exposed a lot regarding different governance system, regarding different type of ideals like the transparency and accountability. So these digital natives or the Gen Z population seeks accountability, seeks transparency, seeks the comparison between different countries like their own country and the other developed countries, that if their country is getting something, why not our country should get the similar kind of things, right? So that's why they are the digital natives who are roughly between 18 to 30 years. So that means they are the youth population. Now why they are protesting? Only because of social media? The answer is no. See, social media acted as a spark, but there is an underlying issue which you might have already got from the last part of the discussion regarding the timeline, that there is utter political chaos that is going on in the country. There is complete instability. Every year there has been change in government. Now, when there is every year change in government, there is no such proper policy certainty. Apart from this, they are educated but underemployed or unemployed. Why? Because if we talk about roughly Nepal ke population ka 40% population is the youth or the Gen Z population. Now this is the population which will seek the job opportunities, which wants new job opportunities. In this, roughly there is a data that 4+ million population are migrating. Now, why people migrate? There are certain pull factor, there are certain push factor. Pull factor means other better opportunity in other countries. But there are a lot of push factor also. That means not getting proper opportunity in their own country. That's why the 4+ million population from their own country have to reside away from their home and have to work outside, and they are sending back money. So they are sending the remittances. So roughly 25% of Nepalese GDP is constituting of the remittances. That means the people who are working outside sending back to their home country this particular remittances. So this is the amount of remittances. When we are talking about the unemployment, this unemployment is roughly 20%. That means 20% people who are willing to get employed, but they are not getting opportunity. So these are the underlying causes. Isn't there any other cause? So there is another major cause, which is the issue of nepotism. So there have been a term which is the Nepo kids that have been circulated widely, because this social media is one such thing that helps us to know a lot of things what is going on in the world. So the people or the youth in the Nepal is seeing that the Nepo kids are enjoying a lot of privileges in their country, also different other countries also, and it is the youth of the Nepal who have to go through all this particular pain. And apart from that, even after that, there is the social media applications ban. So when combinedly all these things met, eventually there was a spark that was added after the social media ban, and that led to the massive protest, initially peaceful, later on became violent. Now see, one such good thing also regarding this Gen Z population is that majority of them are also going for certain comparative methods. For example, they are not like suppose karo, if there is somebody who is not performing their own task, that they are thinking ki chalo theek hai, this is the part and parcel of system. No, they seeks the accountability, they seeks the transparency. So there are these particular values like accountability, transparency, right? And there are many such values that these people seeks. Why? Because a lot of exposure is already there, a lot of examples they are seeing across the world. Whenever there is protest movement going on in any country, this social media is one such media which is propagating those particular things, helping to get to know about the causes, the ideals, and if we are also facing similar kind of difficulties. So in that cases, the accountability, transparency, lack of decision making, political related wills, that is not available over here, and all these things were sought by those people, and that led to the escalation of the issue, which eventually turned out into a violent situation. And whatever we have seen on the news, on the social media, the images regarding the burning of the places like the parliament building, president's house, the court, and a lot of other public places that we had seen. So it is a combination of the multiplicity of the factor, and the Gen Zs are leading this particular protest. Now, when we are talking about the protest, we have talked about two specific issues. First was the immediate spark. Now, the immediate spark was added by ban on of 26 social media platforms. Now, these social media platforms acts as the platform to express themselves. So they are the platform of expression. That means freedom of speech and expression is getting curtailed. And when these media are getting banned, now the people are aware that the government is trying to curtail even their right to speech. And in that cases, there will be further autocratic tendencies that will eventually emerge in the government, and that will lead to further escalation of the issue. So that was the immediate spark. What were the underlying fuel? The underlying fuel we have discussed regarding the social conditions, like there is the issue of the nepotism that was reflected in the context of the Nepo kids, right? They are getting the privileges, and the other sections of society, which is the commoners, that are getting all the kind of trouble. There were economic aspects like the unemployment. There was issue like the lack of opportunities, right? Then there were political also. These are the underlying causes. These were already available. In that case, instability. And this instability, roughly 14 government in 17 years, you can talk about this also. So these are the issues, and iske alawa bhi there are multiple other issues. For example, the issues like corruption, lack of transparency. There is also another major issue that the Nepalese government is trying to bargain with India by showing the China card. So always there was China card. See, if there is Communist Party that is ruling, comparatively their alignment with China is bound to be increased, because the values, because of the support and funding that they might be getting, right? So they are also playing the China card. So even the geopolitical aspect, maybe there is certain issues, and the youth were fed up with these particular things, that why you are not focusing upon the development, why you are trying to polarize all these things, why you are trying to go between these particular two countries and try to take advantage from one country by showing the other country's card. So youth who had seen the movement like the 1990 ka movement, or the movement between 1996 to 2006, or post-constitutional adoption, the crisis that were there. Now they were seeking for certain stability, because previously when monarch was there, now there is the elected government or the democratic elected government. There should be some benefit, but that is not getting available over here. That means in some way there is corruption that is going on, and this particular corruption is benefiting whom? The corruption is going to benefit these Nepo kids, because eventually After this generation, the next generation of these people is going to rule over them. That's why the people protested. That's why even the politicians, a lot of people who were having the high position in that particular region, who were misutilizing their own offices, they were caught by the people, and eventually a lot of things that were done over there. So this was the immediate spark which was in the form of the social media ban. But eventually the major issues that were there, and these things when the UPSC will ask regarding this, because this is not that only in Nepal these particular things are going on. There are multiple other places where the similar kind of movement we have seen. Whether you talk about Sri Lanka, whether you talk about Bangladesh, whether you talk about Myanmar, whether you talk about recent events in the Indonesia. Previously, even in Pakistan, similar were the issues, right? So all these places, there was some underlying fuel, but that needed spark, and that particular spark once added, that led to the violent protests also, right? Now, see, when we are talking about the issue, there is some deeper structural issue that is there. To some extent, we have discussed. First is the political instability. When there have been lot and the frequent changes within the government and of the prime minister, there is no political certainty. People will think that yes, this government has adopted certain policies, next government, next year they will come, they will remove all these things. This year they are trying to go for better relation with India. They are going to go for ties. They are going to go for certain collaboration. Next year they will try to increase their relation or betterment of the relation with a country like China. And then eventually whatever benefits that were there with the relation with India, that are not going to get benefited, right? So the political instability, and that was reflected in the form of 14 governments in the 17 years. Next is about the socio-economic frustration. The youth got frustrated. They got disillusioned with the government, that despite the representative of people, they are not representing at all. They are supporting their own kid. Their kids are living luxurious life. And what we are getting, we have to go outside the country in order to earn the bare minimum. 25% of this country is coming in the form of remittances. 20% से ज़्यादा unemployment है, right? All these things ignited the socio-economic frustration. And once the peaceful protest, which was against the social media ban, when that particular protest was going on, that protest met with certain violence, then the people also became violent, and eventually there was a lot of issues that we have already seen. Now, the governance is basically when the government is in action, talking about the social, economic, political, and all the dimensions. When there is political instability, it is going to directly impact the governance deficit. Why? Because when there is no clarity on the policy, where there is no continuity, when there is no accountable government, when every time when they are going for any other country ke sath relation, every time the prime minister is getting changed, so in that cases the governance deficit is bound to happen at that place, right? The people are also seeing in the frustration that the government is not having any political will. They are not doing anything for the betterment of their own country. What they are doing, they are just taking the money and putting that particular money in their own pockets. That's why there was governance deficit, lack of development, rise in poverty, a lot of other issues that were there. Lastly is the geopolitical squeeze. So here, when we talk about, let's say, the country like China, here let's say it is India. This is the position of Nepal. Now Nepal can get benefited from both the countries taking the advantage. But when you are trying to take the advantage which is undue in nature, and when this particular advantage is got by showing the other country's card to the next country, in that case both the countries are also aware that they are trying to take the advantage of the situation that they are in. And in that case, the other country might also try to utilize this country to put pressure on country. For example, in this case, the China, by playing the Nepal card, they are trying to ensure that the relation between Nepal and India gets deteriorated. And when we talk about the Nepal and India relation, it is the roti and beti ka rishta. There are many people from Nepal on a daily basis, they are working in India and then again going back to their own country. The language is similar, religious similarities there, the cultural, ethnic, a lot of similarities that is there. Even with respect to defense, there is a lot of commonality, including the Gorkha regiments and even including the the chief of army staff, which is having the recognition in both the countries. So a lot of things are there, but still, if you are going to take the advantage from India by showing the China card, that means the other country is also aware that you are trying to take the undue benefits. But then if that is also made aware to the public that yes, see, this is what the government is doing, then obviously the people are also that much aware that they have protested for their own rights. So this is the deep structural issue that can be seen in the form of a pyramid structure, right? Now, what were the unique feature as far as this movement was concerned? Now see, whenever any specific movement is a leader movement, for example, there is one leader. If you capture that leader, that particular movement get dissipated. For example, during the colonial time period, it was mainly like Mahatma Gandhi ji who was the leader of movements like the non-cooperation, civil disobedience. Now if the leader got caught, maybe the chance that public get directionless, right? Or maybe a chance that if the leader will say, that public might be coming to the negotiation table. But here it was the decentralized and leaderless movement. That's why a lot of places, but despite not having coordination, they were coordinated in their whether attacks or whether there is like burning of the parliament and many other places, because the discontent was there at each and every place. There was no such single leader. Yes, the spark was initiated by certain people, but that particular spark culminated into the entire country. An entire country has seen the turmoil. But yes, still it was a decentralized and the leaderless movement. The next important thing is regarding the digital mobilization. So there are digital tools. So when the spark was added by the social media websites or social media platform ka ban, they utilized the VPN, which is the virtual private network, in order to dodge the country's ban, right? Encrypted apps were being utilized. So encrypted apps were being utilized in order to go against that particular ban, and then the propagation of the views and all that was there. And even they have utilized the cross cultural connectivity. For example, this particular skull and straw hat, which is from the Jolly Roger, which is the Japanese anime One Piece mein jo depict kiya gaya hai, that particular thing was displayed. And this is not only in this country, a lot of other places have seen similar kind of displaying. Because this series talked about freedom, this series talked about the values and virtues, which is talking about the liberty and all. So that shows that the influence that these particular people got from cross-cultural connectivity, that influence can even ignite the movement against the ruling dispensation. Next is about the pop cultural symbol. So these were the symbols that were being utilized. Apart from that, even you might have seen certain videos that the people are, even they are destroying, but later on they are also showing the responsibility by cleaning those streets and all. They are asking for accountability. They are asking for transparency. That means it's not about that they want to demolish. Even if they are demolishing, then also they are seeking for accountability. They want the new government to take over. They want they should be accountable to the people. They should not be as in the ruling elites. They should be as a responsible leader. Lastly is the intergenerational gap. So the previous generation wanted to seek the resignation if there is some threshold that has been crossed. Now this generation, we can say that this generation is more seeking for accountability, because they are seeing a lot of example across the globe that whenever there have been these trends that start emerging, that leads to the autocratic tendencies. That's why at the very beginning only they wanted to get rid, because they have seen it in their country only, which is regarding the different movements which we have discussed previously, and also outside their country, the similar movements in different other countries. That's why there have been certain unique feature and certain commonalities with the other features, right? Now, when we are talking about the movement, it's not that Nepal is the only unique country where the movements were seen specifically from the youth, which can be termed as the youthquake. So in 2024, we have seen in Bangladesh, right? So there was exile of Sheikh Hasina, and then there was, after the massive protest from the side of students and many other personalities, right? And eventually country was taken over by Muhammad Yunus, and he is acting as an advisor, right? Again, to some extent, we can say that there is certain sense of anarchy that is prevailing. So once, if there is no such other alternative that is there, and that is also democratically acceptable, in that cases, there may be anarchic situation that may be there. And that issue might lead to a lot of difficulties for whatever objective they have protested. Like right now in Nepal, they are protesting for the development, they are protesting for employment. But if this continues for a longer period of time, this will further destabilize country rather than providing these developmental opportunity. In Sri Lanka in 2022, we have seen the protest regarding the corruption, nepotism against the Rajpaksha brothers, right? Gotabaya Rajpaksha and the Mahinda Rajpaksha. And that particular movement was prominently known as Argalya, right? So that movement was there in Sri Lanka. Again, a youth-led movement that led to the destroying of a lot of properties and eventually led to exile of the Rajpaksha brother. In 2021, in the Myanmar also, when there was military coup, so the youth came against that particular coup and the youth protested. There were a lot of TikTok reels and all that were spread regarding mocking that particular army wala stand, right? So youth again, so in Myanmar, different portions pe different ruling governance is there, right? So in 2021, and recent most example before Nepal was Indonesia, where in August 2025 there have been protests. Now the youth are protesting. Why? Because there have been increasing in the allowance of the member of parliament and the member of legislative assembly. On one side, the people are not getting even the wage rise, but on the other side, the member of parliament and the member of legislative assembly people are getting a lot of privilege, and even there has been substantial increase in the wages that they are getting and the privilege that they are getting. So the people protested, and right now, as a measure of to some extent satisfy the need of the students and the youth, there have been the stopping of this particular raise that has been done. So we can see a lot of countries, even previously there have been Pakistan, the movement against Imran Khan. So this is a pattern that is visible in the South and the Southeast Asia. So you can see across South and Southeast Asia, this particular pattern is going on. Whenever the governance is going corrupt, whenever there have been the absolutist tendencies, the people are emerging as the champion of upholding the democracy, freedom and the liberty, right? So these are the modern day movement which are going on. Now, this is an important thing, that why there are certain critical implications for Nepal and India. See, we too are the country which are sharing our border, not only the political border, but there is the ethnic ties. There have been a lot of social bonding, economic bonding, a lot of dependence that is there, right? So from the perspective of Nepal, when we talk about if there is no such kind of alternative that is available. So recently, after the resignation of the Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, there have been now interim government that has been established under the leadership of Sushila Karki, right? Now there has been an alternative. Now it depends upon that particular interim and the alternative governance, that how they want to handle this situation. If that is not handled in a proper manner, then this will lead to the continuous struggle. The success was seen in the case of Sri Lanka, where the movement led to comparatively better situation. Within a few months, there was comparatively better situation, and now Sri Lanka is doing comparatively good. But on the other side, Bangladesh, there have been a lot of issues. Pakistan, a lot of issues. Myanmar, a lot of issues. That's why the example has to be taken from the successful country where they were able to secure the developmental priorities rather than going into the anarchic situations. This is the learning for Nepal. But when we talk about India, India's internal security, because we have the open borders with Nepal, so the vigilance is very important, and Nepal is generally considered as the hub of a lot of agencies. So there can be even the people from different countries, nationality, that may be entering upon, that might pose the threat to the internal security of the country. Apart from that, even with respect to the democracy, regarding the movement, when different agencies are also flourishing these particular movements and they are trying to take advantage of this, so India also have to be very cautious with respect to these kind of emerging trends. So that's why ensuring all the checks needed that should be available, right? And apart from that, there is also economic perspective, because Nepal is an important partner. India is providing developmental grant. India is taking the energy from Nepal also. So a lot of dependence is there. So in those cases, if there is instability, India's economic purse is also going to get impacted. So that's why having stability in Nepal, so that the other countries which are there, in order to take the advantage of the turmoil wala situation, prominently the countries like China and Pakistan, those should not get advantage of these things. The advantage in the form of economic, advantage in the form of strategic, that should not be gone. So India has to be very, very cautious. India has to be mindful in order to ensure whatever policies India is going to take, that policies should not appear as an interference in the domestic polity of Nepal. Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji have congratulated already to the interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki ji, right? So in that case, there have to be comparatively better alignment of the relation without interfering in their domestic polity. That is the need of the time. Because right now, when the youth is aware, it's not like that they will accept the interference a lot. That's why India should be cautious. India should be mindful, providing all the idea regarding India's domestic priorities, along with that cooperating with the partner, which is very, very important from the domestic as well as the international perspective, right? Now, lastly, when we are moving forward with respect to the solution in this regard, so the need of the time is first regarding the political reform. So there has to be urgent need, which is to ensure the political reform. That means there should be certain domestic instability which is going on in Nepal, that should be addressed. Now the youth which is protesting, that should also occupy the offices in order to provide the alternative governance. And whatever government is going to come in Nepal, now they will need the support from the side of youth, the way the things got channelized, right? So youth inclusion in different offices, whether it is the constitutional offices, government offices, or even the public offices, right? There should be inclusion of the youth, so that the aspiration and the need of youth can be taken into consideration. Lastly, the changes should not be just the changes to be done. There should be sustainable changes. The democratic reform should come from within. It should not be like that there should be forcing of these particular things. That should come from within if the country has to flourish, not only as a democracy, but as a country which is inclusive for its population. That's why there is a need to ensure all, and that thing should come from within Nepal only. What role India should play? India's role should be as a guide, as a helping hand, and not as a interferer or as a person which is seen by the Nepalese youth as the interfering entity. So in that case, how India should be acting? India should be acting as a responsible neighbor, as an elder brother to Nepal, with respect to guiding about the institutional reform, with respect to suggesting certain reform. And this collaboration should go on in order to flourish the relation between both the countries, right? So now, why this topic is important: GS1 from the history perspective, GS2 polity and the governance perspective, GS3 from internal security perspective. As this term Gen Z, as this movement related issues is going on across the South and Southeast Asia, that's why there can be a probable question regarding the India and Nepal, and along with that recent trend of the protest movement across different countries. So I hope that these things, whatever we have discussed, the trends along with the historical context and the academic discussion, is helpful to you from the exam perspective, and that should be the important thing from the preparation related aspects. So I hope the things are clear to you. Thank you, everyone.